Well, your Cleveland Cavaliers with another double-digit win make that 4 in a row. The NBA trade deadline just hours away. And oh yeah, a guy from Akron, Ohio is now the NBA's all-time leading scorer. It is an action-packed Cavaliers post-game report coming at you right now. Well, hey, what's up? Hello, Cleveland. How we doing, Cavalier fans? John Rudder, Spencer German here coming at you with another edition of a Cavalier post-game report. The Wine and Gold victorious again, 4 straight, a 113-85 winner over the Detroit Pistons on this Wednesday evening. And it looked like it was going to be a blowout there. Then it got a little too close for comfort. Ultimately, almost a 30-point win for the Wine and Gold. Got a lot to talk about with this one here, with the trade deadline just a few hours away, some names off the table, and oh yeah, that guy LeBron James making headlines again. We'll share some thoughts on some of the Cavaliers, or what Cavaliers head coach JB Bickerstaff had to say about LeBron during our post-game report. But Spence, we'll open up the floor to you. Big win, 4 straight. Boy, things really rolling for us right now.
Yeah, I keep going back to I think I'm calling it the post fracas was the thank courtesy of you, the reply you sent me a couple nights ago, the post fracas Cavaliers, and like you said, they've won 4 straight since that little altercation with Memphis, and I also am keeping kind of track of like the point differential, the margin they're winning by in each game, and right now they're at plus 85 is the total that they're winning these games, but like in total they've won all their games by plus 85 points. And I think like that just speaks to how dominant they've been on this win streak, which is massive. And the reason I'm keeping track of that specific moment is, I wrote on the site over Cavs Insider about how sometimes it takes a moment like that to almost spark something or trigger something with a team. And it certainly feels like they're playing with I shouldn't say completely different mojo, but it almost feels like it was something that kind of woke them up a little bit and has them playing at a higher level and beating up on teams that they are just flat out better than, which is what you want to see from a team that's young and still kind of trying to figure it out. So I think it's an exciting time. I also am keeping an eye just on the NBA standings right now. And after the win tonight, you're just a game back of the 76ers, who obviously are coming up on the schedule here in the next couple, I think next week, actually. So, this is a very important stretch for the Cavaliers leading up to the All-Star break to kind of see where they can place themselves in terms of the playoff picture when they come out on the other side of it. So I'm encouraged by what I see, and it's great that maybe we're making a bigger deal out of the fracas than we should, but I don't know, like it's interesting to see how they've played since then, and that they're certainly playing at a very high level and going out and winning games. So it's encouraging, I think, what we've seen of late.
The fracas, a long A out there. Fracas at the field house.
Yeah, my bad. It's been a long week.
But to your point, though, I think it was kind of the culmination of 2 nights earlier, JB Bickerstaff kind of gives the speech to the team about, look, let's block out the negativity. The effort against Miami that night wasn't acceptable, and then they get the charge from Donovan Mitchell because of the dust up with Dylan Brooks, and things have been cruising since then. So it's definitely, look, we were talking about, we're kind of reaching the point where you like to see this team start to turn the corner, establish that identity, play to that identity. And I think that you have to admit that's kind of what we've seen so far this season, or so far these past couple of games. This is the 3rd straight game where they have held their opponent under 30% shooting from the 3-point line. They've been paying attention to their perimeter defense as of late, and it's really showed so far.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt all the things you kind of name off there. The defensive intensity has been picked up. Offensively, it seems like they're getting contributions from really everywhere. Ricky Rubio has just kind of gradually looked better and better as he spent more time out on the floor and kind of gotten back into a routine and into the rotation, which I think is also encouraging because we know how important he was to this team last year. And if he can kind of get back to being that type of player for them on that second unit, I mean, that's huge. We talked recently in a podcast about how at the beginning of the year we thought this team had so much depth, and that was kind of rearing its ugly head that maybe they're not as deep as we thought. Well, Ricky Rubio is kind of the kingpin in that kind of working, and he's going to be the key piece that kind of makes you feel like you have depth on that second unit. So that's good to see. I thought tonight the fact that you didn't have Mitchell and Garland, I kind of didn't know what to expect. Like, yeah, the Pistons aren't very good. This Cavs team should beat them even without those two. But you kind of thought like, okay, Mitchell and Garland aren't out there, so maybe they take them lightly and take it kind of easy. But it was the same Evan Mobley we've seen of late where he's being aggressive. He's attacking the basket. I think he was 7 of 14 from the floor, which is obviously great. Jarrett Allen was a monster tonight as well, both on the glass and offensively. And I tweeted at one point during the game, like, the unit that was out on the floor just had like no perimeter scoring. Like nobody could knock down threes. But second half, you got Dean Wade going a little bit. Isaac Okoro, I think, hit a couple as well. So obviously encouraging to see. I think just right now, this team is collectively in a rhythm, and they feel good about the way they're playing with each other and off of each other. And, you know, if they're playing like this, especially with Mitchell and Garland obviously in the lineup, there's no reason to think that they can't beat or compete with almost all these teams in the Eastern Conference or most of the teams in the NBA. So it's an encouraging thing. We mentioned the standings. They're kind of climbing their way up there. Chance for that game against the 76ers to really mean something next week in terms of maybe getting to that 3 spot, which they're in the 4 spot right now. Shout out to Kyrie for, I guess, inadvertently kind of helping Cleveland, despite being a former Cavalier. He's still kind of helping the Cavs out by getting traded to Dallas, and the Cavs back in that 4 spot and trying to see how high they can get on the standings, which I think we all would agree. If they can host a first round series, it's a pretty exciting step for this team, and I think something that all fans would be satisfied with. So.
Sure. The only thing that looked good tonight for Detroit were the uniforms. It was a
those things are awesome.
The uniforms look great. They not a whole lot else to really hang your hat on if you're a Pistons fan for tonight. Rubio, 8 points tonight coming off of the bench, and JB Bickerstaff saying even without Mitchell, even without Garland, that was purely still on the minutes restriction that Rubio is still on as he works his way back to kind of full strength or full health with the knee injury. Howell Neto getting the start at point guard, and I think you have to look in a limited sample size. I thought that he gave you a lot tonight. This was an inferior opponent, as you touched on, somebody that you need to come in and beat. 14 points for Neto. I believe it was 8 assists as well. The energy was there. The defense was there. He said he found out that he was going to play this morning. So, look, he was kind of put in a little bit of a difficult spot. I thought that you got about as much as you could have asked for him in that position tonight. Oh,
yeah. I mean, for him to score in double figures, he had 14 points on the night, was dishing it out with the assist. I think, for being a role player on this team, a guy that's just kind of a backup point guard for you, I thought he did as commendable of a job as anybody would expect him to do it as that type of guy, not some superstar player, obviously. I also will say, we've had conversations about load management and taking nights off. I have been kind of curious to see how many minutes Donovan's been playing, because he clearly isn't 100%. You can tell the groin is still an issue with him. And because of that, I've wondered why JB has kind of been adamant at times, I guess, added to the list of things that people are holding against JB right now, as we know. But I've kind of been curious as to why he's been playing him so many minutes, knowing that groin still seems to be bothering him. And on some level, I was kind of like, I mean, does it hurt? Is it the end of the world if you just shut him down until the All-Star break and then, bring him back after that and see where he's at? Because you don't want him to get any more hurt. So for him to kind of get a night off, I thought was probably a good thing for him and for the Cavaliers, because you want him long term. It's about beyond the All-Star game and down that home stretch of the season and then into the playoffs with him, more so than some games against inferior teams in February. So I was glad to see that he kind of got a night off to hopefully get himself maybe a little bit back to normal. And we'll kind of see how they handle it from here. But yeah, I thought that was probably a positive to take away from the night, even though Donovan's not out there. It's unfortunate for fans who are going to the game. You don't get to see him. But yeah, I mean, I think he probably needed that night off, and I don't think he needs to be playing as many minutes as maybe JB's been playing him of late.
Well, and to kind of circle back to your point, I think that this all really shows just how close the Eastern Conference is, right? You rattle off 4 straight wins, you bump up a few spots in the standings, and maybe that is kind of to JB's point, like, look, we need all hands on deck right now, and Donovan's our biggest gun. If he's able to go, we're going to throw him out there. But I'm with you. I kind of like the fact that he was able to get a little rest tonight. I kind of wrote in one of my post-game 5 thoughts that I typically throw out there following Cavs games. One of them I'm working on for tomorrow after this win on Wednesday evening. But I wrote that I think it's kind of unfair to say that Donovan doesn't look like himself out there, but you can definitely tell that something is wrong, right? Like,
yeah,
he shot poorly from 3 the other night. I think had a pretty good game on I believe it was on Sunday night or on Monday night. But regardless, there was maybe a little bit of lack of explosiveness, or there just seems like there was something missing from his game that you typically get with Donovan.
I can hear you on not, maybe saying he's not looking like himself is extreme. But yeah, the way you kind of word it, I think is fair. Like, something just seems a little off. Doesn't seem like the same Donovan Mitchell we were getting early in the season. And, and that's okay if he's still dealing with the injury, but I just think like playing him excessive minutes isn't a good thing for him long term. And I do think too, like, tonight's a perfect night to rest him, right? Like, it's the Pistons, again, a team you should be. If you lose to them, I guess it's not the end of the world when you feel pretty good about where you're at in the standings. You just got the 4 spot back, and looking ahead, like, next week you got Philadelphia on the schedule. A couple weeks from now, you got Boston a couple times, 2 times in 3 games on the schedule. Like, these are games that are going to really matter. You got the Bulls coming up Saturday as well. So these are games with teams that are all kind of in the mix in the Eastern Conference, or that you're kind of directly competing with atop the standings or on the lower half of the standings for the sort of the playoff, what the playoff seeding looks like. So more important to have him out there for those games than a game against the Pistons, which is a team that's really going nowhere. And hey, they got the win. They're playing really good basketball right now, from the top guys in Mitchell, Garland, Mobley, etc., on down to the role players who kind of got out there and had a bunch of minutes tonight. So like I said, they're in a really good place right now. We'll see what happens against New Orleans coming up Friday. But I feel encouraged by the way this team is playing right now. And let's hope that's something they can carry into the All-Star break and then hopefully beyond.
The clock ticking down towards the NBA All-Star, obviously to the All-Star weekend here in a couple of weeks, but also to the NBA trade deadline on Thursday afternoon. Cavaliers have yet to make a move, and at this point, Spence, I got to be honest with you, it doesn't really seem like anything is imminent. And you and I were talking off camera before we even started this. A lot of the guys that they may have even been linked to kind of seem like they're off the board. It really seems like these guys being JB and Kobe and this entire staff kind of content to roll with what they got. And let's use this as an experience to learn and get that experience, that postseason experience, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it's been interesting, sort of the rumors that the Cavs have been linked in, because it's gone from, start of the new year, it was kind of hot and heavy, like, oh, the Cavs better find an upgrade. Like, they got some serious issues. And then it's kind of in recent weeks turned more into, well, they don't need to, press and make a move, especially if they don't have the assets to do it. So it's been kind of interesting to follow in that way. You mentioned some of the names they've been linked to kind of already on the move. The ones that come to mind, there was this Lakers blockbuster trade. I guess we can call it a blockbuster. It was a pretty big deal for, I don't know. Is it a blockbuster? It's not like the biggest names anymore. Like Russell Westbrook's kind of I don't want to say a has-been. I do respect Russell Westbrook, but not quite the name or the star power he used to have. But the Russell Westbrook trade, they're getting D'Angelo Russell back in LA. Malik Beasley comes over in that deal as well. There's some pick exchanges and some other players kind of being swapped in it as well. I know Mike Conley's going to the Jazz, going from the Jazz to Minnesota. So yeah, like that's a name, and Malik Beasley that they were linked to. Then a little bit later in the evening, we got the Knicks trade with Portland, where they're swapping Josh Hart for Cam Reddish. Those are both two names the Cavs are linked to, so I think that takes them off the table for Cleveland at this point. There's been some other ones. One of them who they played against tonight, and Bojan Bogdanovic. And I there was moments in that game where I was watching like, man, I'd love if they could get him. And listen, like, he didn't have a great game from a shooting perspective. He was the leading scorer, I think, with 15 points. But I think it's hard for him right now because he is pretty much like the go-to guy there.
Sure.
And his role is better suited to kind of just be that wing who can catch and shoot, or off the dribble gets a pass and then, drives the basket, makes a play. That's why he'd be perfect on this team. Like, he'd be perfect, but it sounds like Detroit's really sticking to their guns with him and asking for a lot that I don't think the Cavs are just going to have to or be able to afford. So I think he's off the table. In like a dream world, OG Anunoby would be awesome, but I don't think that's happening. And, Toronto's kind of got some decisions to make ahead of the deadline on Thursday, so we'll see what they decide. But, yeah, I mean, just based on how things have kind of fallen, based on how this team's playing right now, and based on really how certain role players are playing right now, I think the Cavs probably are pretty content just to stand pat and roll out what they got and then reassess in the offseason if they need to about addressing these positions. I am curious, John, your thoughts, especially being at these games and talking to the players and seeing it kind of firsthand. Isaac Okoro, listen, credit to him because people have written him off numerous times already through his first several years in the league. I think I had my doubts about him. I think you certainly have had doubts about him at times, just that he has these moments where he breaks out and looks like there's something there offensively. We know how good defensively he is. That's never been a problem. But offensively, like, he has these moments where it breaks out, and then it's just like he kind of becomes a Karis LeVert where he's just streaky. Like, one game he'll go off for like 15 points, and then one game he's going off for like 3. And one game he's hitting like 3 threes, and one game he's hitting like none. So I've been trying to ask people who are close to the team, around the team, if they think this is actually going to stick for Isaac at this point. Like, what are your thoughts on his play of late? And is this kind of him turning the corner, you think, where he's establishing himself as a player that can be out there in that wing spot for Cleveland consistently?
Sure. Well, the biggest question that we've all been asking about him and asking of him really throughout this entire season is like, when is the shooting going to stick consistently, right? Like, the defense is there. He can, assist in certain situations when it comes to handling the ball. But they need somebody who's able to catch and shoot consistently from 3. And he really struggled with that. But over the last handful of games, specifically since the calendar flipped, I have noticed in Okoro, and to a larger extent, a lot of these guys on this team are really kind of quiet, laid back. They don't really say a whole lot. Okoro is really to the extreme in that regard. Evan Mobley would kind of be in that category as well when it comes to like personality traits. But I get a real sense of just an oozing of confidence from him recently. And I think that that's gone a long way towards him shooting the ball better. I saw a statistic the other night that I used in one of my columns. Like, I think he made 17 threes up until the new year, but over the last, 16, 17, 18 games now, he's shooting almost 50% from 3-point range. So like, I don't know if it's necessarily a tweak that he made to his shot, or the fact
that has been brought up numerous times. That's like the big story everyone keeps talking about. It's like, oh, he changed his shot.
Sure. I mean, I haven't had a chance to actually to talk with him recently because he hasn't been available. I haven't been directly at practice, but like, they're going down now, and like once a few start falling, like, I mean, you inherently get a little bit more confidence to shoot it. He gets the open looks, and he's going to get those open looks. So like, I think that he's kind of just gotten comfortable in himself. He was mic'd up tonight, right? Like, we saw him, he was loose before the game. Like, he's chatting with people. I've always kind of, in my experience with him, like, he's been kind of quiet, soft-spoken, really hasn't revealed a whole lot. But like, I just kind of sense a new edge to his personality, for a better way to describe it, that is kind of starting to unfold here. He's still very young. And I think that could have maybe factored into the Cavaliers' plans when it comes to exploring trade possibilities, and the fact that if he's someone that you offer up, he's a young guy who has some pedigree, he plays well defensively, and he just hasn't unlocked this particular spot in his offensive game, and perhaps a change of scenery would have done that. He started to unlock that here recently. Yeah. So you have to love what you've seen from him. I'm not able to put my thumb on exactly why, but the confidence is just off the charts for him lately.
Yeah, I pulled it up. 51% from the floor, 58% from the floor, 51% from three since the calendar turned over to 2023. So, I mean, that speaks for itself. He's obviously shooting a lot better. That's the exact type of performance and statistically, that's what they're looking for in that wing player. So, and listen, like it's kind of it's an interesting situation when you have a guy like Okoro kind of break out right before the deadline, because in theory that makes him potentially more valuable in a trade to kind of be like, yeah, he's got some value now. Let's send him somewhere and get something back for him. But on the flip side of that, I can't blame them if they're looking and saying like, hey, we don't have the massive assets to go acquire a major upgrade at this position. And we feel pretty good about the way he's playing. Like on some level, like I think Isaac has at least earned the right to play through this and see if he can let it stick and see if it keeps going. And, this team is young enough. This team feels, you make the Donovan Mitchell trade because you see yourself competing for the length of his contract at least. So like their timeline, like their window's opening, but this isn't necessarily the year that you got to go all in. So I can accept them feeling comfortable not making some move just to get some ancillary piece that maybe fits or maybe is a slight upgrade like a Terrence Ross or something like that. And Terrence Ross, I think, would be a fine addition, but I can accept them not doing that if they're trying to sort of see if finally Isaac Okoro has turned that corner. But if he's, if he hits a slump again at the end of the season, I think then you got to kind of reassess when we get to the off season and decide whether or not he's worth investing in long-term and keeping part of this team long-term. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there, but it certainly sounds like leading into tomorrow, they're okay trotting Okoro, maybe Dean Wade out there in some capacity and letting those guys kind of be in that wing spot and just kind of seeing what they have until, they have to make a bigger decision down the line. So I can live with that. It's not what I necessarily wanted a couple weeks ago. I think I was more adamant about like, hey, go make a move. Like, why waste the opportunity? And I want to see this team get the playoff experience. I want to see this team get into a playoff series. I think that's very valuable experience for them. But yeah, I mean, if I can live with it if they feel like there's truly not some trade out there that's going to make them, that's going to be a massive upgrade, and they feel pretty good about what they have on the roster right now. And Okoro's earned it, so that's fine.
Perhaps the biggest acquisition for this team might even be the unlocking of Evan Mobley, because you talked about the acquisition of Donovan Mitchell. When they did that and when that move was made, like, your priority as an organization shifts obviously to winning as opposed to developing that young core of Mobley, Garland, and Allen. So like the development of Evan Mobley kind of went on the back burner, right? Because you've got Donovan, you're adding him to this group, you're trying to figure out how he meshes and how he kind of mixes in with this entire lineup. And we haven't quite seen
I think your mic's out again, John.
If Evan is able to play and be dominant, look, my settings terrible. Evan's season not that bad, right?
No, I
think my camera keeps dying here and giving me problems. But
hey, you can never. Tech problems are always a thing. It's fine.
If I get through a podcast without an issue, it'll be a first for us here.
No, I was gonna say though, I like where your head's at with this. Like,
sure.
Evan Mobley taking that next step was always part of the equation, and it was kind of drawing the of fans, I think, for a while. him kind of unlocking himself over the last month, Okoro playing better. Those are two things that you were hoping for that you're now kind of getting. And so, yeah, like I'm fine seeing what trajectory both those guys are on and kind of waiting this thing out. I don't know, like, a year from now, 2 years from now, if you're talking championship window being open and this team's in that conversation, like, yeah, you got to go get it. Like, there's no waiting around and just seeing what you got. But this year specifically, like, I think the expectations and the goals are a little bit different for a young team that hasn't ever really played in a playoff environment or a playoff series. I can be patient with that, especially when you got two of the young guys in Mobley and Okoro starting to maybe come into their own a little bit more and look like the players you hope they would become. So I'm good with that. I am.
Sure. And how many times do we hear that Mobley doesn't have to score to have a big impact on winning? And when he does, as he did tonight, 19 points for Mobley, Jarrett Allen with 20. When they get him some touches early, when they get him going early, I think that kind of bodes well for him, and things can kind of snowball in a positive way for him. Look, like, we talk about a quiet guy. They don't come much quieter than Evan Mobley. He's not somebody that's going to like scream and bark and yell to get involved into the offense. So to get him activated early, I think is something that's going to only help him unlock that next level to his offensive game. So that's kind of just where I was going with all that before everything.
Well, and it can't be understated either, like just unlocking his confidence. Like him feeling more confident in himself too, maybe not be the vocal calling for the ball guy, but like when the ball's in his hands, he's not afraid to make a play. That goes a long way, I think, too. And it's part of that evolution and development of his game. So, I think that's all good. Speaking of scoring, I know we wanted to at least hit on LeBron here before we get out. We don't want to make this listen, it's a Cavs podcast. We pride ourselves on sticking mostly to the Cavs, but it's hard not to bring up LeBron when he has the moment he had last night, a historic moment as he passes Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most points in NBA history. And obviously a guy that I think still maybe there's some divisiveness about LeBron after he left again, but I think for the most part, Cleveland and Northeast Ohio, especially Akron, feel very proud of LeBron and think very highly of him as a person and as a player. So here's what I'll say, John. I kind of put this out there last night, like people who wanted to just like dive into like the GOAT debate last night, I think they were kind of missing the point.
Sure.
At the end of the day, like I've just kind of accepted that LeBron's always going to have haters. LeBron's always going to have people who think like that miss the big picture of a guy who off the court has never really been caught up in anything scandalous or malicious. And then on the court has, no matter how you want to slice it, like whoever your personal GOAT is, fine, but has probably played at a level and done things that we've never seen from a player. Just like his ability to not only dominate himself, but get other players, other role players to play their best. And the fact that he's fourth in assists all time while also being the all-time leading scorer, like it's just incredible. Like we've never seen a player like that before. People just can't accept some of that. And you know what? I'm not here to try to convince you otherwise. But I think like if you look at his body of work and you look at what he does off the court from a personal standpoint, a philanthropy standpoint, like the guy is a class act and he is one of, if not the greatest player that we've ever seen in our lifetime. And for me, like, I'm just grateful I've been able to watch the entirety of his so far 20-year career. Like, sure. And the thing for me too, John, is like when I first started really getting into the NBA is when he was coming out of high school and I really started caring. And, I'm living in Western New York, but we don't have an NBA team. So I sort of gravitate towards the Cavs. And because of him, like I cared about the NBA more. I cared about the Cavs more. And then I finally get to Cleveland and like, that's my team now because of him. And I still cheer for him. He's probably, he's my favorite player. He has been since he entered the league. But I can't like think anything other than being just like thankful that I've been able to witness his greatness. And I think if you're looking at it any other way, if you're just trying to begrudge him and, throw shade at him for whatever reason that people might have out there, I think you're going about his career the wrong way. I wish people sometimes would just like appreciate the greatness because, listen, let's face it, Kareem's record is something that I don't think anybody was ever people thought was never going to be touched. And now he has a chance to not only break it like he did on Wednesday or on Tuesday night, but this thing could be like 45,000 points by the time he retires. Like if he plays 3 more years, like he could easily get there. Like it's going to be crazy to see what he sets it at. So yeah, I'm just in awe of his career, and I'm grateful that I've been able to witness it, and particularly witness it firsthand here in Cleveland. So.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. And the guys kind of talked about that. JB Bickerstaff talked about that tonight. Like, look, the argument over the greatest player. Yeah. But like JB summed it up as far as like the best career. He said that there's no contest in his mind. It's LeBron James. And I was trying to kind of convert some video for us to try and import into Tempest here quickly, just to kind of to maybe play some of JB's comments from tonight. But he was like, look, I don't think that there's much of a debate anymore. He talked about the entire body of work. He talked about the assists. And he said, like, there's really no question in his mind who has had the greatest NBA career. It's fair enough to have the debate about who's been the best player. And it's difficult to kind of really compare, your eras, right? LeBron, Michael, obviously, you talk about Kareem, Magic. There's a handful of other guys that you can throw into that conversation. But it really kind of comes down to 2 names, right? It's almost like from, the hockey perspective of it, it's Wayne Gretzky, it's Mario Lemieux, it's Michael Jordan, it's LeBron James. There's really only two answers now. And depending on how you see it, like, I mean, it was cool to watch that game. I'll be honest, I was watching that thinking like, wow, how good is LeBron at 38 years old? He's still able to operate at this level. And how bad are the Lakers? Like Russell Westbrook looked awful, and to kind of circle around to that point.
Either. And then did you see the video of his reaction? Anthony Davis, like he just like sat on the bench and didn't really seem to care that LeBron broke the record. It was kind of weird.
Yeah, it was just like, it's a very weird team dynamic. And then I see a headline tonight that Russell Westbrook and Darvin Ham kind of have a little argument in the locker room.
Yeah, it seems like it's just a tenuous situation out there, which, and listen, I'm right there with people when, like LeBron kind of complains about not having a good team around him, and you kind of laugh because you're like, well, dude, like you kind of built this team, right? Like the joke is always like lay GM and all that. Like, so yeah, I'm right there with you laughing like, dude, you have no right to complain. Like, listen, I can be critical of LeBron too for some of that stuff. But at the end of the day, like my respect level for him has always been undeniable. And I think if you're not at least looking at it in a way of just appreciating the greatness, then you're going about it completely wrong. You're right. Like people are always going to have their individual GOAT debates. I actually thought, did you see, I don't know if you saw the JJ Redick clip from this week.
No,
he had a really good clip. He was kind of making fun of the guys on First Take for disputing whether or not LeBron was like an all-time scorer, because these like Mike and the Mike the Mad Dog, or Mad Dog, basically. Yeah, Mike Francesa was on with Mad Dog the last week, and Mad Dog was kind of saying like, no, I don't really consider him a scorer, and everyone always calls him like a compiler because he's played so long, right? Which is weird because like he's done this in less games than Kareem.
Sure, so that's 150. I was looking at that tonight. Right.
Like that seems odd that he did it in less games, but he's a compiler. Like I don't understand. But also like JJ Redick just kind of pointed out that if you go off of all the narratives that they try to spin about LeBron, like he's not clutch. LeBron has like the most clutch points in NBA history. He has the second most game tying or game winning shots at the end of regulation or overtime in NBA history. The only person ahead of him is Kobe by like 6. And he's got the most game-winning buzzer beaters in playoff history with 5. Nobody has more. Like all this stuff that people try to bring up about him, like, oh, he doesn't have that killer instinct. He's not clutch. He's not this. He's not that. I get the ring thing. That is what it is. If LeBron finishes with less, he's always going to have to hear that. But yeah, I mean, I just think like every single argument wall that people have put up against him, he has essentially shattered it. He's proven everybody wrong every step of the way, but people just continue to just dig up random things to try to say that he's not the best or shouldn't be in the conversation or whatever. And it's just, it seems so much more exhausting to do that than just sit back and enjoy the fact that we are witnessing one of, if not the greatest player of all time right now in front of our eyes. And yeah, like, how do you not appreciate that? And if you grew up with Jordan, like, you got a chance to see Jordan, and with really not a lot of like time in between, because Jordan came back obviously for the Wizards and retired in the early 2000s. And then LeBron, I know the Wizards days are not really that important, but still, like, even like late 90s, like, it's like 5-6 years, and then LeBron enters the league, and now you've seen his whole career. Like, you've gotten to see like back to back, like maybe the two best players ever. Like, why can't you just accept that and enjoy the ride? Like, I don't know. It blows my mind that people just continue to find ways to slander him, I guess, in that way, because he has my respect. We all know in Cleveland he's going to be adored for bringing a championship here no matter what. And I'll leave you with this, John. I always have this hot take in mind that at some point LeBron is going to come back to Cleveland and play at least one more year here. Because if I think about it, like, when everyone's doing these farewell tours now, and where are you going to really do a farewell tour? You're going to do it in LA, where Kobe is always going to be like king there. You're going to do it in Miami, where Dwayne Wade is, runs that town, or you're going to do it in Cleveland, where like you are universally like the king of Cleveland. Like that came from here. Like, you are like a god here in Cleveland. Like, of course he's going to do it here. So I just have a theory that at some point he's coming back to Cleveland and kind of before he hangs it up.
Yeah, legacies are complicated, and I think that's something that maybe a lot of people get hung up on, is the fact that he left, he came back. I think people might have been able to get over that and like accept that if he would have like came back to Cleveland and stayed in Cleveland, but then he departed to LA, and he's been there for 5 years now. And they had the one championship. It was in the bubble, and I know that there's some debate or whether or not you want to call that a real championship or not, since they haven't, done a whole lot else since then or outside of that. But like, look, what's always impressed me is like how I've always been impressed with how big he is and how well he can move. Like, he's a linebacker that can score and can shoot. And they were taking bets on like how and what way he was going to break the record, and like what kind of shot it was going to be. It was going to be a dunk, a 3-pointer. And like, when you saw how it played out, like, that's almost LeBron's shot, right? Like a little one-legged fadeaway. That's kind of like what you kind of expect for him, right? Like, you think of like Michael MJ with like maybe the push off or the step back or the dunk, but like LeBron, like that little falling fadeaway with like the knee sticking out is kind of like what you think about, right?
Very Dirk Nowitzki-esque. Here's the other thing too, I'll say, John, as we talk about legacy. Like, I know everyone talks a lot about how Steph has sort of changed the game, and there's a lot of kids out there. Some people say he's ruined the game, because there's a lot of kids out there who think like, I can be Steph Curry and just shoot threes. And it's like, dude, like, this guy is the greatest shooter of all time. Like, sure, you're never going to live up to that. But I understand why people feel like the connection, maybe that I could be like Steph, because he's a smaller guy. He's a guard. He's shooting. He doesn't have to be this physical, imposing presence to be good, right? Like, that's kind of the connection people make. But when you really think about it, like, for people that grew up in, certain places or didn't have the means, like, LeBron is actually more of an example, I think, of like, statistically, like, LeBron had a better chance of not making it out, right?
Oh,
like,
absolutely. He would probably be one of the first people to tell that and to admit that. And I think that's one of the premises of the I Promise School down there in Akron, right? To give kids who aren't going to have this opportunity a chance.
Like, and so in that regard, like, I feel like LeBron is, I don't know if I should say like more of an inspiration, but like, it was his story was just, I think, naturally more difficult. Like, Steph came from a family where his dad was an NBA player.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
He already had the means and like the connections to like do all that. And he's
Davidson,
he's carved out an incredible career for himself. Don't get me wrong, like, all on his own, and he deserves all the credit in the world for that. But statistically, like, LeBron could have just been another number, like, sure, in the way of like not getting out of that situation or ending up involved with the wrong people. And he made it out. So in many ways, like, I think like he is an inspiration and maybe more of the story that I think can be looked at and say like, I want to follow that guy. And you can apply that to a number of things in life, whether it's just like, hey, I want to be the first in my family to graduate college or something. Like there's so many ways you can apply that. Like I'm going to be the person that gets out. His story is unique in that way. And I think that does make him more relatable than people think, even though most of us will never be born with the physical gifts or just being the physical specimen that LeBron is.
Sure. And even when you look at him, though, those clips from like his rookie year, like he was lanky, he wasn't built from the get go. Like he was tall, sure, but like he wasn't like LeBron is chiseled now, and it is like I remember standing next to him for a media conference or for a media scrum during, I think it might have even been the championship year, and I just remember thinking like his thigh is the size of my waist. Like it was unbelievable how big he was, and just how thick he was, but. I mean, it's a testament to him. Was able to finally able to load this clip in. I'm going to play it here, a minute 30 of JB Bickerstaff on LeBron. We'll see if this works, and then we'll kind of wrap things up from here. But this is JB Bickerstaff's thoughts on LeBron and his legacy in the NBA.
I mean, it's, one of the greatest accomplishments, if not the greatest accomplishment that we've seen. To be able to hold a record for 38 years just lets you know how difficult or the magnitude of that record was. And it's a testament to LeBron, the time that he put in, the longevity. And we were actually having this discussion as coaches, like, to me, there's a debate on who's the greatest player of all times, right? Which is fair. I no longer think there's a debate on who's had the greatest NBA career. I think it's, in my mind, I think it's clear that LeBron has had the greatest NBA career that we've seen to date. Again, for 20 years to dominate the game the way that he has, to impact winning the way that he has, and the way that he's gone about business. Like he's a pro's pro. He's a selfless player. He's about his teammates. Like, not only, what is he, fourth now in assists? So it's not like he was just this, selfish player that was only going for himself. Like he made everybody still makes everybody he plays with better. And I think there's something to be said about that. And I think it's, something for the younger generation and the people who have been watching him coming up to take notice of and pay attention to that, you can be a great player and be selfless at the same time. And I think he's a hell of a role model for all our young guys. I mean, it's
some interesting stuff there from JB.
I'm just going to put it out there. Any chance he's lobbying a little bit for LeBron to come back this offseason? Because everyone keeps saying like he might force his way out. He might be looking to go somewhere. He made the comment last night in his post-game interview that, he feels he didn't say the Lakers. He said, I feel confident that no matter where whatever franchise I play for, I can still contribute at a high level and do some things. It was the answer to, I think, Shaq's question. And when I heard that live, I was like, he said he can do it for any franchise. I'm just saying, maybe JB trying to lobby a little bit to get him back here. He's the missing piece. He's the wing.
He's a small forward, right? I think that's kind of LeBron being LeBron. You can trace that back to like his comments over All-Star Weekend last year.
For sure.
But he loves to be. I think that for better or worse, someone described it this way, and it may sound like a negative connotation, but I think that it is a positive, and look at it as a positive. But like, look, LeBron's looking out for LeBron, and once you get past that, like you're fine. So,
yeah, I think that's 100% fair. He's always played that game. I think he likes he likes to be able to kind of control the message, but also just feel like he's kind of pulling the strings. You know what I mean? Like that's always been just part of LeBron's strategy and the way he operates. So I get it, but I like the idea of JB maybe being a little political there, just in case, to try to lure him back. Like maybe deep down he still thinks MJ is the best, but he's like, nah, LeBron, he's had the best career. So yeah, we take it back.
Right? Hey, remember what I said? He had the best career. I think that kind of circles back to like your point though, of like him growing up in Akron, a single mother. And he could have very easily become a statistic. So that's kind of why he is kind of this control freak. He has carved out this life and this ability, and he's going to do everything he can to kind of to kind of hold the power for lack of a better term. But
yeah. What'd you think of everyone get off my lawn today, talking about all the people who had phones out in the picture?
I thought that was it. I thought that it was interesting because the first time that I saw that photo, or the first incarnation that I saw that photo, was somebody said no flash bulbs, right? Because you think of a historic moment like that, kickoff at the Super Bowl, like you think of all the flash bulbs. Ain't no flash bulbs now. Like there's nothing like that in that moment. It was weird, and kind of illustrates the era that we live in, right? Like how many videos do you see where it's like, you talk to a kid and it's like, pretend you're taking a picture. What does a kid do? Like they hold, as opposed to like put it up to your face like a phone or like a camera. Like make a phone call. What do? They hold it up like this, as opposed to like with the ringer. So I think it just kind of illustrates where we are as a society.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I get a kick out of it because these people who are like, oh, look at the Jordan shot photo, and there's like a couple people with cameras who are taking pictures anyway.
Yeah, but it's also like $800 probably.
Right. But at the same time, it's also like, you guys are basically just poo-pooing that we've had technological advances that allow you to, in an instant, use this device that you can carry anywhere to take pictures and capture moments. Like, who cares? Like, you would have been doing the same thing.
And normally I'm of the essence, and I've tried to be better about this myself, because I have hundreds of videos of like concerts that I've never looked at again, and hundreds of photos from sports, like,
this though is different. Like this
Correct.
Feels like one of those things like, if it was like
this may never happen again.
Right. Like if it was Billy Joel's last concert, like you could be like, hey, you know what I mean? I get what you're saying though. Like, but yeah, like this is like, you can show your grandkids like, hey, I was there. Look at this angle. And I do think too, like we've all gotten good enough now where like you can hold the phone and you can still like follow what's happening with your eyes. Like you don't have to watch it through the phone. And I also got a kick out of, there was this one person who posted like a picture of Phil Knight, who was sitting courtside, and how he was like just like taking in the shot from like the angle that they got him. He was just like sitting there, no phone out, whatever. He's like, notice how someone from a different generation was just soaking in the moment. And I was like, dude, this guy is the president and CEO of Nike. Like he has enough money to buy all the NFTs that they make of that picture.
Right. And whatever an NFT is, because I still don't get that.
Like he doesn't care. Like he doesn't need that on his phone. He can literally buy anything. He can buy the NBA's like reel of that play. Like if he really wanted to. Like this guy's got more money than God. Of course he can. Of course he's not taking out his cell phone and taking an image. He can get it whenever he wants. So I was like, that's such a stupid example of like somebody just so
people like that. People like that. There were Denzel, Jay-Z, LL Cool J. Like, not to diminish the accomplishment, but they see stuff like that every day. Like they'll be at the Super Bowl.
They can pay the photographer like millions of dollars to get that picture like taken and put it in a frame in their house if they really wanted to. But that's
not quite a once in a lifetime experience for them. They get to see stuff like that all the time.
Yeah, like I don't know. You've gone off on a tangent now where we're just we're mad at boomers, but whatever. I mean, it was absurd to me. But we spent way too much time on Twitter just debating that all day long. It was
right. And then Twitter went down right before the Cavaliers game. I had to actually schedule tweets to send some stuff out. I was like, what is happening?
I saw that. I saw that was the thing. Yeah, not great. Thanks, Elon Musk.
All right, your Cavaliers are 113. You talk about going off on a tangent. Your Cavaliers are 113-85 winner over the Detroit Pistons on Wednesday night. They will travel for a one-off on Friday against the New Orleans Pelicans before returning to the Fieldhouse Saturday evening against the Chicago Bulls, and then Monday against the San Antonio Spurs. So the busy schedule continues before the All-Star break. They got Philly on the road before they hit the break. Any final thoughts you want to knock out here real quick before we wrap things up?
No, I mean, I think we covered it all. I don't want to keep people any longer than we already have. So big game Friday. We'll see if they can get it done on the road. We know they've struggled on the road in the past. So yeah, I'm anxious to see if they keep kind of the streak going and what plays out in these next few games leading up to that one with Philly next week, because that has the potential to be a really, really big game in terms of seeding in the East.
4 straight. The Cavs will look to make it 5 straight on Friday night. For Spencer German, I'm John Rudder. The Cavaliers 113-85 winner over the Pistons tonight. You've been watching the Cavs Insider postgame report here on the Cavs Insider YouTube page.